is indicative of an expansion of demand into a segment of the population that never even knew gold and silver existed. Rick Rule often talks about, and I've talked about this with your father quite a bit, prior to 2020, the allocation across the financial matrix in the United States to precious metals was 0.5%, with the mean over the past 40 years rather, since 1980, being 2.5%. And he would always talk about a regression to the mean. In statistics, that's a high probability. Whenever you get away from long-term averages, the further away you get, the greater the magneticism that draws you back to the mean. And so I would argue we are drawing closer to the mean, and I don't know what it is now, whether it's 1% or 1.5%, but a 2.5% expansion would be a five-fold increase in industry that really is not prepared for that. And we're seeing that right now in mints that can't keep up with demand, refineries that can't keep up with demand, retailers that are out of product, premiums that are going to the moon, massive influx into SLV and GLD, the whole nine yards. The whole precious metals equation is growing in popularity, and maybe even more so in realization that there's value there and that it should be part of people's portfolio. That has been lacking for a long time, but with that comes tremendous strain on the industry, and on my own sleep and personal mental well-being. It's a wonderful problem to have, but it's truly insane, Elijah. I can't quite even begin to convey what it's like for people, other than to say it's like the movie Boiler Room, where the phone just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing and calling and calling and calling, and it's the closest thing I've ever seen to insanity. I feel like the toilet paper aisle in Costco last March, truthfully, but good problem to have.
And on that note about how, more and more people are moving into precious metals, it's really unprecedented. What is your perspective on how it seems to be really a move into silver? Because, I mean, if you look at the spot prices, most of the time, gold and silver move in lockstep fashion, right? But actually what we've been seeing in the last month or so is actually this disconnect happening, and silver actually rising more. What is your perspective on that, and do you see that continuing?
Yeah, the realization that silver might be the most undervalued commodity or asset on the planet. Roughly half of its 1980 double peak high. You know, there are no assets that I can think of that are trading at half of what they were in 1980. For any of you that are old enough to remember this, think of what $100 was worth in 1980, what it bought you in groceries, what $50,000 was in 1980. I mean, in 1980, you could buy a home for $150,000 that today is worth $1 million. It's the increase in inflation and in the decrease in the value of the dollar simply since 1980 is extraordinary. And to find an asset trading at roughly half of it that has such massive amounts of utility is waking people up to the value. But it's also the Reddit folks who have, I think, also helped people understand that there's 8 commercial banks that are net short over 50% of the entire volume on COMEX. That's just unheard of. It's the only commodity where you see that. And they are largely naked short. You have also a delivery month, by the way, the March delivery, which I believe begins here on February 24th. And a lot of people are expecting fireworks because of this massive short position, on top of the fact that there's a record long position open interest into this delivery month. And if they stand for delivery, there is all bets are off. There is a possibility that it could put massive strain on the COMEX. Could it break it? Maybe. Could it be cash settlement? Maybe. Could you see massive short covering? Maybe. And I think that these banks who are short right now, this massive short position, not only is incentivizing people to realize this is a heck of a play, much better than that of gold, arguably. But also, I think it offers massive upside potential we don't normally associate with precious metals. I mean, I always talk about precious metals being about return of your investment, less return on it. But I'll tell you, silver is, no question about it, is poised and set up on many different levels supply demand being the biggest of which, for massive, massive upside potential. And again, that's not why I tell people to buy it, but I would be lying if I said I didn't completely see it and expect it. When it happens, how it happens, is anyone's guess. Because when I look back over 30 years, Elijah, most of the stuff we've talked about since the late 80s, early 90s have come true, almost all of it. Never when we thought, always much later than we thought, never how we thought. But mathematics and economics and logic have a way of playing out through time. You can't really run from them. You can hide with variables and manipulation, but in the end, it catches you. Mother Nature will catch us and catch the silver price. And those 8 banks that are massively short, which is foolhardy, used to be easy to do when no one wanted it. Now you have, an awful lot of attention on it. And yeah, I think it's the buying opportunity of a generation. I mean that. And I've been accumulating it myself in favor or in lieu of gold now for the better part of a year.
Now, as we look at really since February, Miles Franklin having the most demand we've ever had. And, I texted you the other day and you're like, the demand is not letting up. Yeah. So kind of getting into that, what are clients asking about? What are on clients' minds right now? What is pushing so many people to jump into precious metals right now?
Just this realization that so many of the assets or investments out there are distorted, that price discovery is so difficult nowadays that I think people take a look at their 401k and their stock portfolios, and it doesn't really register how it could be doing so well against the backdrop of an economy that has been eviscerated. Businesses, small businesses in particular, gone. 140,000 will never come back. That is the backbone of this country. Small and mid-sized businesses represent almost half of GDP, just over 40%, and they're gone. And but not only that, just the things that we used to do in terms of consumption, which is so important to the GDP and the economy of this country, that has just been ground to a halt. And yet through all of that, we see a stock market at all-time highs. I think people realize that valuations are off and that they are looking at maybe the fact that profit's not a 4-letter word, that they're taking some profit in overvalued assets and shuffling it to undervalued assets. I think there's also people's concern about a new digital Fed dollar, which will all but eliminate all privacy and anonymity. I often joke, if you play in a poker game or you play golf with some buddies or whatever it may be, and there's money to be settled up with at the end of the round or the end of the game, now you're on a ledger that the Fed sees.